Good evening, everyone. I'm Lucy Handley, Adult Programs Coordinator at the Ridgefield Library, letting people in. Welcome to the second session of Protest and Praise, 250 Years of American Poetry. This series is made possible through the generosity of the Friends of the Ridgefield Library. Tonight's presenter, Barb Jennis, is an award-winning poet whose work has appeared widely in literary journals and anthologies. Sorry. As well as in 3 chapbooks. As Poet Laureate of Ridgefield from 2020 until 2023, she founded the Poetry in the Garden series held annually in July at Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center. Barb also curates and hosts the monthly Poems from Connecticut's Four Corners virtual series for the Ridgefield Library. Welcome, Barb.
Well, thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Ridgefield Library, as always. Thank you, everyone, for coming in the dark tonight. I hope you all voted. It's election day. I hope you all got your vote in, and we're going to get started. I just wanted to let you know that, hold on, let me get this person in, that we will be having, I'm changing the topics covered in each of the sessions. I think I said in an email that you may or may not have gotten, that I decided to slow down the pace a little bit. We did 150 years of poetry in session 1. This time we're just going to do the eras between the 1920s and World War II. So slow it, although believe me, that's lots and lots of wonderful poems and poets in that period of time. So without further ado, let me get my share. Oops, where is it? There we go, share. And I'll wait till everyone can see that. All right, and then I'll somehow move this out of the way. Slideshow from beginning. All right, so welcome to session 2. I just wanted to also say that if you missed session 1, there is now a recording available on the library's YouTube channel, which I'll try to put, if I remember, I'll try to put that in the chat. Also, if you didn't receive a poetry pack for session 1 and want to receive it, just email me. It's just barbjennis@gmail.com, and I'll send you the poems that we used in session 1. Oops, don't go there. Hold on. Oh my gosh, did I lose it? Oh, sharing screen. What am I sharing? Can anyone see besides my Zoom? Hold on. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Too many clicks around. Okay, so then reactions to session 1. We had one from someone at the library who said, "What a rich selection of poems and poets," which was wonderful. My husband, who's here this evening, his reaction was wonderful but overwhelming, that's why I decided again to kind of slow down the pace a little bit. And also, this time, if you received the poetry pack, there was some information about each of the poems that's included, which wasn't included last time. So that can give you a little bit of a head start on understanding the poem's importance in the history. We're going to start tonight with women's suffrage. The movement of suffrage was nearly a century-long battle for women to win the right to vote. As early as the 1820s, many American women were beginning to feel to kind of chafe against the bit of what historians called the cult of true womanhood, a prevailing value system among the upper and middle classes during the 19th century, centered on the idea that the only true woman was a pious, submissive wife and mother concerned exclusively with home and family. Now, some of these things we're going to encounter tonight are going to sound familiar to some of the current trends in our own society, but that definitely is one to keep your eye out for. Here, let me get some of these guys going here. In 1948, the first women's right meeting was held at Seneca Falls, and it marked the official beginning of the suffrage movement. But just as that campaign was gathering steam, kaboom, the Civil War began, and the effort lost some momentum. In 1916, Alice Paul founded the National Women's Party, whose tactics became a lot more radical than they had been. Up to this point, it had been mostly speech making and meeting with legislators. Now the women were really taking a much more active role. 6 days a week, for instance, the National Women's Party picketers stood outside the White House. I have some there's a great picture there. You can see lower left-hand corner of one of the women with her sign, "Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty?" And of course, the protests infuriated President Wilson, who ordered the police to come and arrest the picketers for obstructing traffic. But when the suffragists refused to pay their fine, citing, of course, it's First Amendment rights, I'm not going to pay a fine. It was decided to put them in jail. Judges decided to put them in jail, and it wasn't just an ordinary jail. It was a workhouse in Virginia called Occoquan. And in fact, on a lot of background here, but it's kind of cool stuff, which I didn't know, which is why I'm sharing it with you. On November 14th, 1917, 33 suffragists, including Dorothy Day, the really famous founder of the Catholic worker movement, were subjected to violent abuse on what became known as the Night of Terror. And when activists publicized what had happened to these women, they were beaten up. One woman suffered a heart attack from the abuse. But when the suffragists, the activists publicized what had happened to them, they really helped to turn the tide. The outrage helped to turn the tide toward the suffrage cause. So, kind of a mixed blessing there. Finally, on August 18th, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, and on November 2nd of that year, more than 8 million women voted across the United States. So let's go to these poems. I love this first one. From 1914 to 1917, Alice Duer Miller wrote a regular column in the New York Tribune called "Are Women People?" It featured short satirical poems and commentary responding to current events about the rights of women. In 1915, a selection of the poems that she published in the newspaper were published in a book of the same name, which, by the way, is available for free on Project Gutenberg. And I really recommend you track it down. It's called "Are Women People?" And it's hilarious. It's just chock full of gems. So let's take a look at this. Why we oppose pockets for women, one of the poems included. Because pockets are not a natural right. Because the great majority of women do not want pockets. If they did, they would have them. Because whenever women have had pockets, they have not used them. 4, because women are required to carry enough things as it is without the additional burden of pockets. 5, because it would make dissension between husband and wife as to whose pockets were to be filled. 6, because it would destroy man's chivalry toward woman if he did not have to carry all her things in his pockets. 7, because men are men and women are women, we must not fly in the face of nature. 8, because pockets have been used by men to carry tobacco, pipes, whiskey flasks, chewing gum, and compromising letters. We see no reason to suppose that women could use them more wisely. So again, just hilarious poems, very satirically hilarious, but well worth a read. Let me see if we got here. This is another fun one. Minna, I guess her name is. I'm pretty sure with the double N it would be Minna. Minna Irving also used satire to skewer the lack of voting rights for women. Best known for her patriotic poems, Irving was based in Tarrytown, New York, where she built kind of a bad reputation for being very litigious and attention-seeking. And in fact, the editor of the local newspaper said, "Don't mention the name of Minna Irving to me again." So she was not a welcome person in the local newspaper. But this is a kind of a fun poem. Who would read her pet for us? And you just take yourself off mute and say, "I'll do it."
I'll do it.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
Her Pet by Minna Irving. The elephant, he waves his trunk. and trumpets for the old Republicans who still refuse to leave the party fold. The donkey for the Democrats lifts up his voice and heels and kicks the platform in his joy and wages his ears and squeals. The bull moose with the Roosevelt clan is marking now, you bet. And everybody has a pet except the suffragette. She too, when she goes forth to vote, will want a mascot maybe. So get that baby carriage out.
I think
That's
we
a
might
good
be
one.
missing a line there, but the implication, of course, is that the baby will be her mascot. So fun stuff again. All right. One of America's first feminists, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, published a collection of poems called In This Our World in 1893. Her poems address the issues of women's suffrage and the injustices of women's lives. In The Anti-Suffragists, which we see here, she calls out fashionable women, successful women, religious women, ignorant women, selfish women, or pigs in petticoats, as she refers to them, and some good women, too, who claim they have all the rights they want. So we don't need to read this entire thing, but let's take, you can see, we'll read a few stanzas. The first one, fashionable women in luxurious homes with men to feed them, clothe them, pay their bills, bow, doff the hat, and fetch the handkerchief. Hostess or guest, and always so supplied with graceful deference and courtesy, surrounded by their servants, horses, dogs. These tell us they have all the rights they want. So she continues, successful women, religious women of a feebler sort, not the religion of a righteous world, a free, enlightened, upward-reaching world, but the religion that considers life as something to back out of, whose ideal is to renounce, submit, and sacrifice, counting on being patted on the head and given a high chair when they get to heaven. These tell us they have all the rights they want. So she continues, and very blistering, assessment of women. I love this. Let's go over to and selfish women in the center there. Selfish women, pigs in petticoats, rich, poor, wise, unwise, top or bottom round, but all sublimely innocent of thought and guiltless of ambition, save the one deep, voiceless aspiration to be fed. These have no use for rights or duties more. Duties today are more than they can meet, and law ensures their right to clothes and food. These tell us they have all the rights they want. So she thinks it's just monstrous that these women are not supporting their right to vote for all these various reasons. I love the last stanza. And out of these has come a monstrous thing, a strange down-sucking whirlpool of disgrace. My gosh, talk about hyperbole. So wonderful. As I said, she was an early feminist. She wrote a lot of wonderful suffrage poetry. So let's see. I loved also the illustration on the bottom. What a woman may be and not have the right to vote. Oops, let me go back up here. Hold on, let me move this out of the way. And she can be a mayor, a nurse, a mother, a doctor, a teacher, or a factory hand and not have the right to vote. And yet, what a man may have been and yet not lose the vote. And he could be a convict, a lunatic, a proprietor of white slaves, unfit for service, or a drunkard. So really, again, another angry condemnation of who gets to vote. I love this illustration in the bottom left hand because it shows, I didn't realize, I'm sure I learned it at one point or another, but that women in the Western states were beginning to be granted the right to vote. Idaho and Utah gave women the right to vote at the end of the 19th century, and starting in 1910, some states in the West began to extend the vote to women too. But still, the southern and the eastern states resisted. And here you see Liberty walking across the country, spreading the right to vote, hopefully to everyone. Okay, so this is interesting. Burton Braley, by the way, is a man, was a widely published poet whose collection Sonnets of a Suffragette was published in 1913. So here's a guy who wrote a whole collection of sonnets about suffrage. His poem, Do It Now, this is not a suffrage poem, but this is his most famous poem. I have to read you a few lines from it. His poem, Do It Now, became widely reprinted after 1915. The poem reads, in part, If with pleasure you are viewing any work a man is doing, if you like him or you love him, tell him now. And then further in the poem, if you think some praise is due him, now is the time to slip it to him, for he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. So just, it's kind of, very sing-songy, but, okay. So who would be willing to read for us The Cry of the Women by Burton Braley?
I will.
Thank you. Hi, Pat.
The cry of the women. We have borne you sons and daughters and suffered in joy our pain. In war with its myriad slaughters, we have cared for your wounded and slain. We have shared your dreams of tomorrow. We have shared your work of today. We have comforted you in sorrow. We have smiled when the skies were gray. We are fit for wives and mothers in palace of tiny coat. We are for the fret and trouble, but we are not fit to vote.
So a man donning a female persona to say all that we're willing, to do for you and you still won't give us the vote. By the way, another reason I'm really anxious, I'm looking forward to getting more into these more contemporary poems, is because you kind of lose that sing-song trope sort of thing that happens a lot and happened a lot throughout the earlier centuries that we covered in session 1. So we're getting a little bit more free verse and modernist as we go along. Okay, so Alice Paul. Now, Alice Paul. Now, the poet here, Catherine Roston Fisher, was an assistant editor of the weekly newspaper The Suffragist. She was arrested for picketing. She was one of those women who was arrested and sentenced to 30 days at that workhouse, the Occoquan workhouse. So her poem is in praise of Alice Paul, who started encouraging women to protest and to really get involved. So Alice Paul, I watched a river of women, rippling purple, white, and golden, stream toward the national capital. Along its border, like a purple flower floating, moved a young woman, worn, race-like, all eyes alight, keenly observing the marchers. Out there on the curb, she looked so little, so lonely. Few appeared even to see her. No one saluted her. Yet commander was she of the column, its leader. She was the spring whence arose that irresistible river of women streaming steadily toward the national capital. So she definitely was the mother of the suffragists. Okay, we're going to move on now to the Harlem Renaissance. Let me see. Now, also we'll cover in this era and in this topic the revival of the KKK that happened right after World War I. The Harlem Renaissance was, as you know, an intellectual and cultural movement of African American music and dance, art, fashion, literature, theater, politics, and scholarship centered in Harlem. It spanned 2 decades, the 1920s and the 1930s, fueled by the great migration of African Americans to northern cities, plus the influx of industrial workers during World War I. The movement only saw its decline with the advent of the Great Depression. At the time, it was known as the New Negro Movement after a 1925 anthology of fiction, poetry, and essays of the same name, New Negro Movement. By the way, at the time, Negro was a common term and was not considered offensive. A cornerstone of the Harlem Renaissance, this anthology, New Negro Movement, was edited by Alain Locke, L-A-L-A-I-N, Locke, with an E at the end, remembered by many as the architect of the Harlem Renaissance. Many poets of this period wove threads of African American culture and heritage into their poems and wrote verses that elevated the beauty of the Black body. They wrote about topics like race, identity, and discrimination, and their work helped shape the way that future generations of Black Americans would view themselves and their place in society. The first poem we're going to read is by Helene Johnson, who was a promising early light in the Harlem Renaissance. At age 20, in 1926, she won a competition judged by none other than Robert Frost. Yet her poems weren't collected into a collection until 2000. She wasn't unique in this idea that she was writing prolifically and being very well received and yet not being published as a collection. Many women poets of the era vanished after early success. And I don't think that was just true of poets of the Harlem Renaissance. I think that was true of many women poets. Helene Johnson was raised in Brookline by her mother and a cadre of aunts, most of whom worked in service as maids. And Johnson eventually moved to New York with her cousin Dorothy West, one of the few Black women writers to have been published in major literary magazines in the 30s and 40s. So let's take a look at, let me get my face out of the way here, Sonnet to a Negro in Harlem. I love this poem because you'll feel, I think you'll feel a real shift in tone as it goes on. Would anyone be willing to read Sonnet to a Negro in Harlem for us?
I'll read it, Barbara.
Oh, okay. Who was that? Mary.
Mary
Please
Keating.
do. Good. Mary, please do.
Sonnet to a Negro in Harlem. You are disdainful and magnificent. Your perfect body and your pompous gait, your dark eyes flashing solemnly with hate. Small wonder that you are incompetent to imitate those whom you so despise. Your shoulders towering high above the throng, your head thrown back in rich, barbaric song. Palm trees and mangoes stretched before your eyes. Let others toil and sweat for labor's sake, and wring from grasping hands their meed of gold. Why urge ahead your supercilious feet? Scorn will efface each footprint that you make. I love your laughter, arrogant and bold. You are too splendid for this city street.
Wonderful. Excellent reading. Thank you, Mary. So you can see it's a tribute to Black men, and yet there are words in there, pompous and flashing with hate that kind of show the duality of being this magnificent man in a society that where racism persists. But I love that, and for instance, scorn will efface each footprint that you make. But still, she's saying, you're too splendid for this street, even though you're going to be marginalized and your footprints will be eradicated. So beautiful poem. Now, this one, in The Negro Speaks of Rivers, Langston Hughes traces Black history from the beginning of human civilization to the present, encompassing both triumphs, like the construction of the Egyptian pyramids, and horrors, like American slavery. The poem argues that the Black soul has incorporated all of these historical experiences, just brought them all in, and in the process has become deep, much like the rivers. So would anyone like to read The Negro Speaks of Rivers for us?
I'd be glad to do that.
Oh, Thelma, I think, Thelma, your face popped up first, so go ahead, Thelma, if you would.
Okay.
Thank you. The Negro Speaks of Rivers by Langston Hughes. I have known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
Oh, beautiful reading. Thank you, Thelma. Thank you. So,
Did anyone see the Broadway show, A Hand is on the Gate? That
no.
was a wonderful evening of Black poetry. And this and several other poems in this were included. It was
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. I bet that was wonderful. But yeah, in this poem, unlike some of the other ones by Hughes that we'll read, it's a real tribute to Blackness, as opposed to a rant against racism, which both are his writing is just so magnificent. And as I said, it's nice to see poems slipping away from, form that was so prevalent in years prior. Let's see what goes on here. Hold on, let me just turn. Is this? Yep, I got this. Okay, good. This poem by Gwendolyn Bennett appeared in the Book of American Negro Poetry, which was a 1922 anthology edited by James Weldon Johnson. Pardon me. The anthology included the works of 31 poets, and it was one of 4 major poetry anthologies of the Harlem Renaissance. So would anyone read Heritage for us?
I will.
Okay, Terry, please.
But I need to see it. I'm not on the screen. What do I need to do?
Oh, if you go in the upper right-hand corner of your face box, do you see what I mean? I think you can pull down to, I don't know.
Speaker gallery. Well, maybe someone else can do it.
Oh, I'm surprised you don't see the power. Have you seen any of the PowerPoint tonight, Terry?
Yeah, I just need to move over a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well,
Go ahead and I'll be in the wings.
well, maybe you can read another one for us when you get to see the PowerPoint too. So anyone else willing to read Heritage?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, Margaret, please.
Heritage, Gwendolyn Bennett. I want to see the slim palm trees pulling at the clouds with little pointed fingers. I want to see lithe Negro girls etched dark against the sky while sunset lingers. I want to hear the silent sands singing to the moon before the Sphinx still face. I want to hear the chanting around a heathen fire of a strange Black race. I want to breathe the lotus flower sighing to the stars with tendrils drinking at the Nile. I want to feel the surging of my sad people's soul hidden by a minstrel smile.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So, yeah, so all this joy that the poet perceives as being part of Black heritage and culture, just lost to them as they hide their sorrow and their soul behind a minstrel smile. By the way, we never. I should have done some work on blackface during Civil War poems, but that's something else for future consideration. But the whole minstrel scene was a very important part of poetry in the Civil War era. So, but I'm actually kind of glad we didn't get there. Anyway, okay, let's keep going. Oh wait, I wanted to just to give a little introduction to this next one first. At the end of World War I, many African American soldiers who fought in segregated units such as the Harlem Hellfighters came home to a nation whose citizens often did not respect their accomplishments. And we'll see this, by the way, we'll see this again when we get to World War II, and then a little later this evening, and then the Vietnam War in session 3. Indeed, the demobilization of both Black and white members of the U.S. Armed Forces following World War I resulted in increased competitions for both jobs and housing, triggering a steep rise in anti-Black sentiment. During the Red Summer, the infamous Red Summer of 1919, white supremacist terrorism and racial riots occurred in more than 36 cities across the U.S., resulting in dozens of deaths and multiple occurrences. Despite and by the way, the Tulsa race riots were later, but it was same sentiments which fueled that. Despite the increasing popularity of Black culture in the 1920s, virulent white racism continued to affect African American communities, including in the North. The writing of many Harlem Renaissance poets, most notably Langston Hughes and Claude McKay, addressed the issue of racism head on. So we're going to take a look at this first poem by Langston Hughes. It's a response to Walt Whitman's famous poem, I Hear America Singing, in which all kinds of tradesmen, masons and carpenters and woodcutters and shoemakers all sing of, quote, what belongs to them and to no one else. So this is the Black perspective on singing. So who would read for us, I Too Sing America?
I'll give it a shot.
Oh, please.
All right. I Too by Langston Hughes. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
Wonderful, thank you. So this hopeful assessment of the future, but also reflecting on the segregation of having to eat in the kitchen when company comes that they're currently facing, that the Blacks were currently facing. So, and I've always loved, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. Would that be true? But anyway, so that's a very famous poem, probably one of the most famous Langston Hughes poems. So let's keep going here too. Oh, Claude McKay. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, here we go. A key literary landmark came in 1919 when the communist poet Claude McKay published his militant sonnet, If We Must Die. Although the poem never alludes to race, you'll never see Black or Negro in there, African-American readers heard its note of defiance in the face of racism and the nationwide race riots and lynchings that were taking place. So, boy, yeah, this is a hardcore poem. So who would take on for us If We Must Die?
I want to.
Okay, please.
If We Must Die by Claude McKay. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and pained in the inglorious spot, while round us back the mad and hungry dogs, making their mark at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us through death. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous coward pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Dying, but fighting back. So a little bit more defiance than had been seen in the poems of the era. Okay, let's keep going. We'll see another example of Claude McKay coming up very soon. Let's see. We won't read all of this. This is a magnificent poem, and I put a link to Dana Smith, who was one of the poets who read our Poetry in the Garden series this summer, reading the poem in its entirety, and it is powerful. They played it recently at a protest here in town, and it just, hearing it read in a beautiful Black voice just was left an impression like you wouldn't believe. So if you get a chance, go on YouTube and just search for the poem. We won't even stop to read it now, but or to listen to it now, although I had hoped to do so. I'm just watching time here and getting a little nervous. Let America be America again. In this poem, Hughes continues the comparison of what from those who live like leeches on people's lives have versus what people of color and poverty can expect. And repeatedly he says, you know, America was never America to me, or something of the same ilk. It was never America to me. Oh, but let's go in the center section here, where he, by the way, if you see these lines, these dashes, that indicates I've left out a section of the poem. So let's pick it up from after where that occurs. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose, the seal of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains and the endless plain. All the stretches of these great green states, and make America again. So, although in the beginning he's denying that America ever was, he's calling for it to the dream to come alive again. So I'll leave you to read this poem in its entirety, and hopefully take a chance to listen to Dennis Smith's amazing reading on YouTube. Okay, now just before we get to the next page, this is the era when Ku Klux Klan made a major resurgence after the Civil War. By the way, a major revival of the Klan was inspired by Birth of a Nation, director D.W. Griffith's violently anti-Black blockbuster film that promoted the Southern lost cause view of the Civil War. The Klan peaked in the 1920s when its membership exceeded 4 million people nationally, and the profits rolled in from the sale of its memberships and regalia, costumes, publications, and rituals. Kind of like things are being marketed to us today, as you may be thinking like I am. White-robed Klansmen participated in marches, parades, and nighttime cross burnings all over the country. Unlike the early Klan, the 1920s Klan, though founded in the South, was not exclusively Southern. It boasted support nationwide, primarily in the Midwest. It enjoyed a small-town base, but also appealed to big city Protestants. In small towns, Klan membership often helped cultivate business relationships based on members' desire to patronize fellow Klansmen. Oh, and by the way, the Klan's small business members included a Kansas City haberdasher named Harry S. Truman, though Truman soon thought better of the idea and demanded his $10 back. Of course, the Klan was much more than a social group or a business network, of course. It was hostile to Blacks, but also to Catholics and Jews. The original Klan had been specifically formed to combat freedoms for freed slaves, and the new Klan continued that trend. So let's go to The Lynching by Claude McKay. Would anyone read this for us? Oh, Terry, can you see it?
I got it up on my phone.
Excellent. Okay, please, Terry, if you would.
The Lynching by Claude McKay. I'm gonna move it over. His spirit in smoke ascended to high heaven. His father, by the cruelest way of pain, had bidden him to his bosom once again. The awful sin remained still unforgiven. All night a bright and solitary star, perchance the one that ever guided him, yet gave him up at last to fate's wild whim, hung pitifully o'er the swinging char. Day dawned, and soon the mixed crowds came to view, the ghastly body swaying in the sun. The women thronged to look, but never a one showed sorrow in her eyes of steely blue. And little lads, lynchers that were to be, sorry, danced round the dreadful thing in fiendish glee. My God.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There was a photographic exhibit called No Mercy, I think, that were photos of lynchings. It came through Detroit some years ago.
Amazing. Wow.
Postcards from the lynchings.
Oh, yep, yep.
They're very, very collectible, unfortunately, in terms of Black Americana collectibles.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I could say a lot more about that, but I won't.
It's sad. I was reading in something I read in researching, it said that most white Americans viewed these just as hangings. Or at least, of course, in the back of my mind, I was thinking they pretended they thought of them just as hangings for crimes committed. They knew better. Anyway, let's keep going here. Let me get this out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this poem all night, actually.
Oh, I know.
Right? Yeah.
The last part of the poem where the women thronged to look, but never a one showed sorrow in her eyes of steely blue, and the lynchers that were to be the small children, just it's horrible. That's why McKay and Hughes, as you can see in the next poem too, just really were so brave to speak out against racism and all these events that were happening and with the rise of the Klan again. So, okay, so Ku Klux. Will anyone read that one for us, please?
I'll read it.
Okay, thanks, Jenny.
Ku Klux by Langston Hughes. They took me out to some lonesome place. They said, "Do you believe in the great white race?" I said, "Mister, to tell you the truth, I'd believe in anything if you just turn me loose." The white man said, "Boy, can it be you're standing here assassin me?" They hit me in the head and knocked me down, and then they kicked me on the ground. A Klansman said, you know what he said, "Look me in the face and tell me you believe in the great white race."
So, the horror, right? I wonder how widely these poems were read outside of metropolitan New York, even, or in Washington D.C., which is also a very big member of, cultural member of the Harlem Renaissance. But I guess that's a question I should do some further research on. Okay, so we get now to the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age, which also includes Prohibition. I couldn't find many good poems about Prohibition, and then also the rise of Nativism, which is another aspect of our history I was not entirely privy to. The Roaring Twenties. While the Harlem Renaissance offered to African Americans a celebration of their heritage and culture, all Americans enjoyed a period of economic prosperity during the 1920s as the country successfully transitioned from a wartime economy to a peacetime boom. Arriving in the wake of World War I, the spirit of the Roaring Twenties was marked by a general feeling of novelty associated with modernity, exemplified by such technological advances as automobiles, moving pictures, electrical appliances, telephones, and radio. Jazz blossomed. The flapper redefined the modern look for women, and dancing and speakeasies and nightclubs rose in popularity. Thus, the period is also often referred to as the Jazz Age. All right, so we're going to get into some of the more interesting cultural aberrations of the Roaring Twenties. In the social revolution of the 1920s, inhibitions faded and youth demanded more freedom from old controls. A new woman was born, the flapper, which, by the way, was an Old English term for prostitute. She was a woman who danced, drank alcohol, smoked in public, drove automobiles, and voted. This new woman cut her hair, wore excessive makeup, and partied hardy. It's easy to see how this freedom movement got started. While men were away at World War I, women got a taste of the freedom of working outside the house. They were reluctant to give away that independence, particularly after the 19th Amendment gave them the right to vote. New careers opened for single women and with salaries that helped them be more independent. A generational gap began to form between the new woman of the 20s and the previous generation. All this freedom was happening during the Prohibition era, a period from 1920 to 1933, when the federal government prohibited the production, importation, transportation, and sale of alcoholic beverages. Prohibition was formally introduced nationwide under the 18th Amendment, ratified in 1919 by the way, 46 out of 48 states. So it met with great approval at least by the legislators. The various restrictions on alcohol and gambling were widely unpopular among the common masses, leading to rampant and flagrant violations of the law. Speakeasies flourished, and the country saw a rapid rise in organized crime to supply partiers with the social lubrication they demanded. So think Al Capone. And by the way, we won't be reading Edgar Lee Masters' Deacon Taylor, a short poem about the Prohibition from Spoon River Anthology, but it's in your packet. But here we have The Wild Party. Now, The Wild Party was a book-length poem written by 26-year-old Joseph March, a protege of Robert Frost at Amherst. March improvised the poem a few lines a day over the summer of 1926, soon after quitting his job at the New Yorker, for which he had served as the fledgling magazine's first managing editor. The poem, which is hilarious, by the way, the poem is hard-boiled jazz-age tragedy told in syncopated rhyming couplets. It tells the story of a wild and decadent party thrown by a vaudeville dancer named Queenie and her lover Burrs, a violent and jealous vaudeville clown. The party is attended by a cast of colorful characters, including a lesbian stripper, a cocaine-addicted playboy, and a black boxer. As the night wears on, the party spirals out of control with drunkenness, drug use, and sexual excess, leading to, of course, tragedy. So, oh, and by the way, I don't know if you're familiar with the wonderful illustrator Art Spiegelman, but he illustrated the book in 1994. You can still get copies. It's still in print. And this one, his black and white illustrations for it are just wonderful. So anyway, The Wild Party, the book, was too hot to publish until 1928 when a limited edition of 750 copies emerged, but it was still banned in Boston. And I don't know, I guess apparently I wasn't familiar with this, but a musical version of the book has been staged across America. And William Burroughs, author of Naked Lunch and Bohemian par excellence, credited The Wild Party with having made him decide to become a writer. So anyway, so just let's get a taste of the book-length poem from The Wild Party. Who will read for us, please?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Queenie was a blonde, and her age stood still, and she danced twice a day in vaudeville. Gray eyes, lips like coals aglow. Her face was a tinted mask of snow. What hips, what shoulders, what a back she had. Her legs were built to drive men mad. And she did. She would skid, but sooner or later they bored her. 16 a year was her order. They might be blackguards, they might be curs, they might be actors, sports, chauffeurs. She never inquired of the men she desired about their social status or wealth. She was only concerned about their health. There was little she hadn't been through, and she liked her lovers violent and vicious. Queenie was sexually ambitious. So now you know, a fascinating woman as they go.
Wonderful reading. Thank you. So again, I highly recommend the book. It's in paperback. You can get it. I'm sure your local independent bookstore would be happy to order you a copy. So, okay, let's keep going. Oh, okay. Poet and painter. I guess this one is Minna Loy. Was the first woman known to write about jazz in her poetry. Her jazz-related poems reinforced jazz as an intellectual and socially acceptable form of entertainment, which it wasn't widely considered by some of the elites. Harriet Moore, editor of Poetry magazine, found Loy's work, which was usually had unflinchingly intimate aspects of female sexuality, too radical to print. Nonetheless, Loy helped launch the modernist revolution in poetry in the United States. In The Widow's Jazz, she refers to the disappearance of her second husband, Dadaist Arthur Craven. So would anyone like to do from The Widow's Jazz? It is quite a bit longer poem, but anyone want to share it with us?
I'll give it a go.
Okay, thanks, Margaret.
Okay. The white flesh quakes to the Negro soul. Chicago, Chicago. An uninterpretable wail stirs in a tangle of pale snakes to lethargic ecstasy of steps, backing in to primeval gold. White man quit his actin' wise, colored folk have the moon in their eyes. Haunted by wind instruments in groves of grace, the maiden saplings slant to the oboes, and shampooed gigolos prowl to the sobbing taboos. The black brute angels in the human gloves bellow through a monstrous growth of metal trunks. Husband, how secretly you cuckold me with death, while this cajoling jazz blows with its tropic breath among the echoes of the flesh, a synthesis of racial caress.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, not an easy read.
No.
But also it shows, she was really groundbreaking in her work, and really did get the modernist, gave a good shove to the modernist movement with her her diction and all sorts of, the lack of there's nothing sing-song about this poem. So.
No. It was like snakes and it's a wild party.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. I love the sobbing taboos. Anyway, okay. So let's see. We got this one too. This is a fun one. Footnote on a flapper. Patience Eden was a pseudonym for Martha Banning Thomas, who taught kindergarten until she was stricken by polio. She subsequently supported herself by writing primarily short stories and poems, and by 1928, she was contributing poetry to the New Yorker as Patience Eden. So I'll read this one. Footnote on a flapper. Drinda's slippers kick the stars round in great abandon. She scarcely leaves one in the sky an angelette could stand on. Drinda's slippers use my heart as a stone to rest on, as she climbs to greater heights, She is just a guest on all the throbbing valves and veins. Little that girl cares that I sometimes need my heart for personal affairs. So just a fun, I mean, even if you didn't know that Patience Eden, the pseudonym or the real name, the real person behind the pseudonym Patience Eden, was stricken by polio and was unable to dance and to be a flapper, you still get the idea that some people just weren't cut out for the job. It just was not something that everyone wanted to partake in or were able to partake in. So a fun poem, very short. Okay, so all right, just another introduction to the next section here. The old and the new came into sharp conflict in the 1920s. While many Americans celebrated the emergence of modern technologies and less restrictive social norms, others strongly objected. In many cases, this divide was geographic as well as philosophical. City dwellers tended to embrace the cultural changes of the era, whereas those who lived in rural towns clung to traditional norms. What's more, beginning at the end of the 19th century, immigration into the U.S. rocketed to never-before-seen heights. Many of the new immigrants came from Eastern and Southern Europe. For many English-speaking, native-born Americans of Northern European descent, the growing diversity of new languages, customs, and religions triggered anxiety and racial animosity. It might sound familiar. In reaction, many embraced nativism, prizing white Americans with older family trees over more recent immigrants. So, to preserve the ideal of American homogeneity, the Emergency Immigration Act of 1921 introduced numerical limits on European immigration. The National Origins Act of 1924 went even further, way farther, greatly restricting immigration and ensuring that arriving immigrants were mostly from Northern and Western Europe. It closed the door on almost all new Asian immigration and shut out most European Jews and other refugees fleeing fascism and the horrors of the Holocaust. Labor unions and the Ku Klux Klan both supported the bill, this National Origins Act of 1924. When President Coolidge signed it into law, he declared, "America must be kept American." Now, Lothrop Stoddard was an American eugenicist known for his book, The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy of 1920. In it, Stoddard argued that non-white populations threatened Western civilization. While some defend his work as reflective of the era, a little bit of zeitgeist xenophobia, it promoted racism and discriminatory policies. Stoddard advocated for eugenics, white supremacy, Nordicism, and scientific racism. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, where his books were recommended reading. He got rich on that, in fact. Stoddard's work influenced the Nazi government of Germany. In fact, his writing about the menace of the underman in 1922 may have introduced the term Untermensch into Nazi discussions of race. Now, in this poem, Ted Robinson, who was a noted columnist for the Plains Dealer, Midwestern columnist, combines light verse and wry commentary in revealing the racist philosophy of Stoddard and his fellow white nativist Albert Wiggum. So this is one that is very metrical and rhyming. So anyone want to take a stab at this one? That's okay. Okay, so at the Nordic, let me get this out of the way, sorry. At the Native American Society, talk about a nativist title if you ever heard one, said Mr. Albert Wiggum to Mr. Lothrop Stoddard when they had finished dining, quite thoroughly befoddered, "Now let us fill our glasses and drink to racial purity, and may the Nordic rule supreme today and in futurity. Religiously we raise our cups, and heartily we swig 'em," said Mr. Lothrop Stoddard to Mr. Albert Wiggum. Said Mr. Albert Wiggum to Mr. Lothrop Stoddard, In coddling swarthy foreigners, not only man but God erred. I've proved by science that we must breed faster or be stung. The future of the Nordic race depends on lots of young. Here is to the young, especially that young whose name was Brigham, said Mr. Lothrop Stoddard to Mr. Albert Wigham. Said Mr. Albert Wigham to Mr. Lothrop Stoddard, of freedom and equality too long, the books have doddered. My science shows democracy to be unscientific. Your figures show that black folks are too terribly prolific. Statistics are one best bet, if only we could rig 'em, said Mr. Lothrop Stoddard to Mr. Albert Wigham. So, kind of scary, the whole idea of trying to increase the birth rate of the Nordic race. I mean,
Kind of current, isn't it?
yeah, very current, isn't it? Yes. So, anyway, let's keep going here. This next poem, again, very reflective of the 20s. Nativists also stoked a sense of fear over the perceived foreign threat, pointing to the anarchist assassinations of the Spanish prime minister, the Italian king, and even President William McKinley as proof. This fear, combined with anxiety over the rising tide of immigration, came to a head with the trial of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. They were Italian immigrants who were accused of participating in a robbery and murder in Braintree, Massachusetts in 1920. There was no direct evidence linking either of them to the crime, but in addition to being immigrants, both men were anarchists, who favored disruption of the American market-based capitalistic society, including through violence. At their trial, the district attorney emphasized Sacco and Vanzetti's radical views, and the jury found them guilty. After spending 7 years in jail, both men were executed in the electric chair on Sunday, August 21st, 1927. More than 20,000 protesters had assembled on Boston Common to try to stop their execution. So we have here, let me see. Would anyone like to take a stab at reading this one for us?
I can do it. I'm Italian.
Okay, thank you. Excellent.
I mean, I don't speak Italian, but okay. They Are Dead Now by John Dos Passos. This isn't a poem. This is two men in gray prison clothes. One man sits looking at the sick flesh of his hands, hands that haven't worked for 7 years. Do you know how long a year is? Do you know how many hours there are in a day when a day is 23 hours on a cot in a cell, in a row of cells, in a tier of rows of cells, all empty with the choked emptiness of dreams? Do you know the dreams of men in jail? They are dead now. The black automatons have won. They are burned up utterly. Their flesh has passed into the air of Massachusetts. Their dreams have passed into the wind. They are dead now. The governor's secretary nudges the governor. They are dead now. The Superior Court judge nudges the Superior Court judge. They are dead now. The college president nudges the college president. A dry chuckling comes up from all the dead, the white-collar dead, the silk-hatted dead, the frock-coated dead. They hop in and out of automobiles, breathe deep in relief as they walk up and down the Boston streets. They are free of dreams now, free of greasy prison denim. Their voices blow back in 1,000 lingos, singing one song to burst the eardrums of Massachusetts. Make a poem of that if you dare.
Wow. Thank you, Sandy. Good reading. So, the 20s. Lots of stuff happened and many, many things that we didn't cover, all of which were wonderfully covered in poetry of the era. Okay, so now we're moving on to the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Let's see what we got. Oh, okay. The Great Depression was the worst economic crisis in modern history, lasting from 1929 until the beginning of World War II in 1939. The causes were many, including the rapid and reckless expansion of the U.S. stock market. When the stock market crashed in October of 29, it triggered an international economic crisis. A rash of bank failures followed in 1930, and as the Dust Bowl increased the number of farm foreclosures, unemployment reached nearly 25%. That's amazing. Industrial production in the U.S. declined 47%, and the real gross domestic product, or GDP, fell 30%. The severity of the Great Depression becomes clearer when you compare it to a more recent recession, America's next worst recession of, as you may recall, of 2007 to 2009, during which the country's real GDP declined just 4.3% versus 30%, and the unemployment rate peaked at less than 10% versus 25%, like in the Great Depression. Presidents Herbert Hoover and Franklin Roosevelt tried to stimulate the economy with a range of incentives, such as the Farm Security Administration, for which a lot of those pictures were snapped by Walker Evans, Dorothea Lange, and Arthur Rothstein, and they worked for the FSA. Ultimately, though, it took the manufacturing production increases of World War II to end the Great Depression. Oops. This one, yeah. Yip Harburg was co-owner of an electrical appliance company that went bankrupt shortly after the Great Depression began. Harburg teamed up with composer Jay Gorney, and they began writing songs about the Depression. For one song, Harburg had some lyrics in mind, but couldn't think of a good title. He and Gorney decided to take a break, go for a walk in Central Park, where a young man approached them, his collar turned up and his hat pulled low, and asked, "Buddy, can you spare a dime?" And voila, they had their title. In this poem, you'll hear references, or these lyrics, you'll hear references to 4 Great Depression realities. Bread lines, where food was handed out to the unemployed and homeless. Railroads. By the 1920s, an extensive system of railroads crisscrossed the U.S., and the railroads were a powerful symbol of the country's lost industrial strength. Skyscrapers, called towers in this poem. In 1931, New York completed the Empire State Building, the tallest skyscraper in the world at that time, and people celebrated the achievement as a mark of America's technical and engineering prowess. And veterans, another incident I didn't know about, the 500,000 boots that went slogging through hell in the poem. In 1932, some 17,000 war vets and their families traveled to Washington, D.C. to seek financial relief based on their military service. Several veterans were killed when U.S. soldiers were ordered to drive them from the city. Another familiar sight and sound. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to take time. I'm watching our time here. We're getting short. But please, we all have heard the song, but we probably never really listened to the lyrics and how telling they were of what people endured at the time. Just like in this poem, I'd rather not be on relief, captured the sentiments of the countless newly impoverished Americans. The poem was turned into a song by migrant workers in California's Farm Security Administration camps, which, by the way, if you've ever read, there's a wonderful book by Kristen Hanna, called The Four Winds, which you end up living in one of these camps, and you see how incredibly awful the living was there. And by the way, when you read the poem, the CIO at the end is a reference to the Congress of Industrial Organizations, which was a federation of unions. But yeah, please take time to read these poems in your packet, because they give you a very good insight into what life was like for these Americans. Oh, I think I missed my notes on this. Oh, no, I didn't. Here it is. Okay. The Book of the Dead is a long narrative poem we won't read tonight, written by Muriel Rukeyser, published in 1938. The poem commemorates the worst industrial accident in U.S. history, the Hawkness Tunnel, or also called the Gawley Tunnel tragedy. In the early 1930s, Union Carbide sought to build a 3-mile tunnel through Gawley Mountain in West Virginia to provide power from a hydroelectric plant on one side of the mountain to one of their subsidiaries on the other side of the mountain. The contractor chosen to do the job decided to use a method called dry drilling to speed up the work, even though it created a lot of dust and made it hard to see in the unventilated tunnels. Union Carbide understood the risks, but prioritized finishing the project on time. The result, almost half of the 3,000 workers who worked in the project developed acute silicosis, a lung disorder caused by prolonged inhalation of silica dust. An undetermined number of men, likely somewhere between 700 and 800, died. The exact number can't be confirmed because, to save money, workers who died were buried in large, unmarked graves. Despite the company not being punished, this tragedy did lead to the passing of 2 important laws that improved safety standards in federal contracts and introduced labor practices such as a national minimum wage and fair pay for industrial workers. So again, a mixed blessing. So I won't take time. Oh gosh, this is told in the persona of a Black worker who has ended up having to bury 35 of these men in his backyard. 35 tunnel workers a doctor didn't attend died in the tunnel camps under rocks everywhere, world without end. And he goes on to say that as dark at the final stanza there, as dark as I am, when I came out at morning after the tunnel at night with a white man, nobody could have told which man was white. The dust had covered us both, and the dust was white. So again, this is a long, long poem, but it gives you an idea of the peril, and it's told from different people's perspectives involved in the tragedy. Again, I think you can get this one, the full text. I'm not sure if it was through Project Gutenberg that I found it, but it was online. So if you search for full text, The Book of the Dead, you'll find it. Okay, so then this one, kind of a charming ending poem. This is a found poem, which is it's created by, culling lines from the transcript of a 1938 interview conducted with a real woman named Elsie Wall, who lived in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Elsie was interviewed by an employee of the Work Project Administration's Federal Writers Project. The transcript is archived with the Library of Congress. I don't know if you can still get to it, but as part of the American Life Histories, manuscripts from the Federal Writers Project. And it's, when available, a wonderful source of primary documents for students and educators. So these are just things that the woman said, in this interview that were reported in the transcript. Elsie Wall rocks in her chair between supper and dinner, 32, but looks 45. Never learned how to chop in the garden, never learned how to pay at the store. Rocks in her chair between supper and dinner, children in rags lined up on the porch. All she can count, all she can figure. How can she clothe them to send them to school? Daughters with bright eyes of Jean Harlow hang Jesus and movie stars framed on the walls. $6 a week for 6 mouths in the family. How will they get work? Get out of this town. Let me get this out, move this up. Jim works in the cotton mill, tends crops in the garden. Elsie can cook if there's food in the house. Pots catch the flow from the rainy roof leaks. Rocks on her porch in rain or in fine weather. So just a very simple poem that kind of reflects life during the Great Depression. Okay. Late 1930s, Depression-era hardships fueled the rise. Oh, am I jumping ahead? I am. I'm going to skip over this. They're wonderful. It's from Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl Ballads. It was a wonderful album. It's folk. You can find it through the Library of Congress, their folk songs collections. And it was actually his best-selling album. It's considered to be the first like theme album that was one of the first that was created, and it mirrors his own life. He traveled with the Okies. He was from Oklahoma. He traveled with them out west to California, trying to find a job. Again, that book, The Four Winds, is wonderful in that it tells how another mass expulsion of Mexican farm workers during this period of time, and it ended up that they paid these Okies coming to try to find any sort of work less than they had been paying the migrant farm workers from Mexico. So it definitely tells you what life was like for these folks. So please read both these poems or lyrics for poems. He was American classic. Okay, so we're getting near the wire here. I'm going to probably speed ahead on some of these. In your packet, you're going to find poems written by Austrian children who were members of the Hitler Youth that kind of show how revered he was. Indoctrination at its finest, just like Stalin was so widely revered in Russia. A wonderful short poem by W.H. Auden. We're going to look at some of the other work by Auden. Refugees Blues is fantastic. I don't think, again, we may not have time to read it, but please take a look at this because you may not have realized that Auden, although he was not born in the U.S., immigrated here. Let's see. Let me see if I get the right year.
Difference.
Oh, it was completed in March of 1939 when he was living in New York. And the poem is spoken by a Jewish refugee living in New York who is addressing his lover and reflecting on the fact that he and many other refugees in a similar position are not made welcome in the city. So you can see the many trials of these refugees who were able to get in. At this point in time, the refugees were really widely cut off, even though it was a time of one of the greatest displacements of humans that has ever occurred. They said, I think with millions of European Jews displaced from their homes, still the U.S. had a very poor track record of offering asylum to them. So, and then most notoriously, in June of 1939, the German ocean liner St. Louis and its 937 passengers, almost all Jewish, were turned away from the port of Miami, forcing the ship to return to Europe, where more than a quarter of the ship's passengers died in the Holocaust. So, we were not opening doors widely to refugees at that point either. And then last from Auden here, even though the Refugee Blues is a really powerful poem, this one is probably one of his best known poems. September 1, 1939 was written in the immediate aftermath of Germany's invasion of Poland. And it captures so well the anxiety and disillusionment and uncertainty of a word on the brink of catastrophe. The speaker asserts that we, quote, children afraid of the night who have never been happy or good, end quote, all played a role in creating the current crisis, imposing, as the world did, a slew of offenses and insults on the German people from the time of Martin Luther to the present age. So he's in this the first couple of stanzas, Auden is reflecting on the fact that Germany was really hit very hard by the Treaty of Versailles. And as he states very well at the end of the first column there, what all school children learn, those to whom evil is done do evil in return. So it's not that he's pardoning them, but he's finding a reason why the Germans embraced Hitler and Nazism. So anyway, that's wonderful, another very important poem. And then, oh my gosh, World War II. There was Roosevelt really attempted, and everyone else attempted to remain neutral at the beginning of the war. Americans had seen what cost was involved in a global war, hundreds of thousands of Americans dead in just a couple of months, and they felt that the price was not worth the benefits of that. So, but it was Germany's invasion of Poland on September 1st that marked the turning point for the Neutrality Act. And of course, it was the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 41 that led to America's full-scale involvement in the war. And let's see what we got here. Oh, I love, you can see Dr. Seuss was a leading propagandist, a cartoonist. You can see a couple of his works here. Let's see, this one, let me get out of the way. All out aid to our allies. You can see this, the ship is not going anywhere. And then this one up here in the upper right-hand corner. And the wolf chewed up the children and spit out their bones, but those were foreign children, and it really didn't matter. That's Adolf the Wolf, America. And notice on her chest, America First. And that was a 1940s cartoon by Theodor Geisel. Okay, so I'm trying to figure which ones are the absolute. Oh, we have not done Gwendolyn Brooks, even though she's such an important poet of this time. In this poem, she talks about having a lover go off to war and knowing, kind of intuiting that they aren't going to come back. And what's so really, really sad about it is that she says, when he went walking grandly out that door, that my sweet love would have to be untrue. She knew that when he went grandly out that door, that my sweet love would have to be untrue. And then she repeats that line, would have to be untrue. So the likelihood of being killed was just so overwhelming. Would have to court coquettish death, whose impudent and strange possessive arms and beauty of a sort can make a hard man hesitate and change. And he will be the one to stammer, yes. Oh, mother, mother, where is happiness? So, it's a real lament for the loss of someone loved. Liberty by Archie McLeach shows two parts of liberty. I mean, when you have a lot of it, as in the second stanza, when liberty is wedded wife and keeps the barn and counts the byre, liberty amends her life, and she drowns her torch for fear of fire. So it's when you have to fight for it that she really wants to see the torch blaze. And then, this poem, I hate to lose any of these, but I don't want to run over too late. Sniper by Lucian Strick. Would anyone, we got to hear this one. Who would read this one for us? It won't take long.
I'll do this one too.
Oh, thanks.
Sniper by Lucian Strick. An inch to the left and I'd be 20 years of dust by now. I can't walk under trees without his muzzle tracks me. He'd hit through branches, leaves pinned to his shoulders, whistling. We searched him everywhere, up trunks, in caves, down pits. Then one night, his island taken, he stepped from the jungle, shade, leaves still pinned upon him, glistening in the projector's light, and tiptoed round to watch our show, a weary kid strayed in from trick or treat.
So here's this sniper who's been picking them off and they couldn't find him, who one night, his island has been taken, so doesn't have the need to fight anymore. Staggers in to watch a movie with his enemies. It's so touching. He's straight in from trick or treat. These kids who go off to war. Anyway. Okay. So this, I hope you're all familiar, and if not, The Death of Ball Turret Gunner by Randall Jarrow is just an amazing poem. It's 5 lines, and it's about the death of a gunner in the Sperry ball turret on a World War II American bomber. Partly due to its short length, only 6 lines, the poem has been widely anthologized, 5 lines. In fact, Jarrow came to fear that his reputation would come to rest on this one poem alone. Now, if you're not familiar with what a ball turret gunner is, you can see what this position entailed. I don't know. There's a wonderful movie about it's the name of the bomber where they had a ball turret Anyway, very clearly a very precarious job to have. You're in there, you have two major guns that you're shooting, you can pivot in this thing. I would not want this job for anything. And the most famous line is the last one in the poem. When I died, they washed me out of the turret with a hose. So just aghast. So let's see what else we have here. Oh, William Stafford, just briefly, he was a pacifist. He actually ended up doing time, not time, but he had to serve in the civilian public service camps as alternative service. He was a qualified conscientious objector. He earned $2.50 a month for doing that. But in this poem, another heartbreaker. Tantalized by the wind, this flag that flies to mark your grave discourages those nearby graves, and all still marching this hillside chanting, heroes, thanks, goodbye. If a visitor may quiz a marble sentiment, was this tombstone quarried in that country where you slew thousands, likewise honored by the enemy? Reluctant hero, drafted again each 4th of July, I'll bow and remember you. Who shall we follow next? Who shall we kill next time? So, and then I won't read this one. May Starton wasn't even an American poet, but please take a chance to read it. It definitely gives you an idea of, again, the idea that these wonderful, marvelous, redheaded little boys are put into this war machine, and within 6 months, something she repeats 3 times in the poems, in 6 months this can be done, is turned into a killing machine. And for him, down at the last 2 lines, for look at him now and swear by every bomb he will release, this shall be done. This shall be done in peace. So she repeats not just it can be done, she says it will be done.
Barb, just really quickly, because I know you're trying to get us all out on time. There's a really amazing also poem from Richard Hugo, who was contemporary, Letter to Simic from Boulder, from the 31 Letters and 13 Dreams, where Hugo writes a letter to Charles Simic, realizing that he had dropped a bomb over Yugoslavia, where Simic grew up. And it's just such a poignant apology that he gives to his dear friend. And
Isn't it?
yeah,
There's a recording of it too, isn't it? Also a video?
I'm not sure, but if there is, it's just a really, really, I just put it in the chat there. It's letter to Simic from Boulder. Sorry, I got the prepositions wrong. I'm typing quickly. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with it, it really captures kind of, the sentiment of Hugo's like young naivete at being kind of thrust into the war, and then realizing later in life the consequences of it. In fact, could have been that Charles Simic may not have been with us.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Imagine, meeting and befriending the person you bombed.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm going to speed through here. I hope you can stay with us a few minutes over. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. This poem is another heartbreaking poem. Well, what poem about war isn't? But it's from James Tate's first major collection of poetry of the same name. And it's to the poet's father, a B-52 co-pilot who died in combat when the poet, Tate, was barely 5 months old. In the poem, Tate's persona speaks of Jim, who was his father's co-pilot, who now his face is turned to mush, corn mush. So he was his facial was badly disfigured in the same battle that Tate's father lost his life in. And then he also mentions Dallas. A little bit later, you face Dallas, your hoodlum gunner now with blistered eyes, reads his Braille edition. So this survivor has lost his sight. And then meanwhile, Tate's father is just is gone, but his spirit continues to, quote, spin across the wilds of the sky like a tiny African god. So he's mad about it. I mean, there's anger. That toward the end, he even says, passing over again and again. Oh yeah, he's a little miffed that he won't even tell him how he's doing, and that he's where is it? I feel dead. He says, I feel dead. I feel as if I were the residue of a stranger's life. So many children experience the loss of a father in the war, and just never get to see him again. Another wonderful poem. Oh my gosh, about the war in the air. The idea being that, well, if you're lost in the air, if you're a pilot and you're lost in the air, chances are we're not going to see your body. That's the good news. What's he call it? In the clean war, the war in the air. So seldom the boats come back bearing their tales of hitting the earth, the incompressible sea, but stayed up there in the relative wind, shades fading in the mind. So, these pilots who, there were no trace of them ever. So another great poem. I'm going to skip over this. There's 2 poems in the packet where, again, Langston Hughes resurfaces and talks about, will VJ Day or Victory over Japan Day be me day too? Talking about, when I come back, will you, where is it? The wonderful lines. Will the Jim Crow laws still stand? Will Dixie lynch me still when I return? Or will you, comrades in arms from the factories and the farms, have learned what this war was fought for us to learn? And just also the defeat, another wonderful poem. Oh, it's from a wonderful collection, small book called Poets of World War II. It's the first poem in this book. And it basically is talking about how, on a train in Texas, German prisoners eat with white American soldiers. So they're mixing these, prisoners with the white soldiers, and they're eating meat. And meanwhile, the Black American soldiers sit apart and they're eating heart. So again, segregation, injustice, even though they too were fighting. And the editor of this book talks about how when he was in the service, he flew with all whites, and his whole command unit were all whites. But the only time they met the Black pilots was in battle. They never saw each other on the ground. How awful, right? So, okay, not going to do that one. Oh boy, you can't get through World War II without talking about the Holocaust. Just more light. I just want to spend a minute on this, where he's basically, Anthony Hecht is talking about, he begins with the tale of a prisoner held at the Tower of London who becomes a martyr, and he's burned at the stake. But unfortunately, the bag of gunpowder they hang around his neck doesn't ignite, and therefore the burning of him is very slow and very tortuous. And his legs were blistered sticks on which the black sap bubbled and burst. And he talks about howling for the kindly light, and also he refers to Goethe, whose last words allegedly were more light, equating the idea of darkness being death. And then, oh my gosh, from this, go back. We move now to outside a German wood until the end of the poem. Relates a terrible story. And the phrase "at that was one, but by no means the worst." In other words, the story I told you about this man who burned at the stake was a terrible tale, but not the worst. And he talks about he goes into a German wood where 3 men, 2 Jews and a Pole, are being ordered by a German. He never says the word German, but you can tell because there's a Luger and there's a glove and there are military boots or riding boots. And he orders which I'm trying to remember which way it goes in. What's say?
Nothing, never.
Oh, okay. Anyway, orders the Jews to dig a grave, and orders the Pole to get in it and for them to cover him up. And just before he is covered, the German soldier says, "Stop, let him out." And then he has the pole bury the two Jews. And I love this, again, the symbolism of light, the second to last stanza, no light in the blue Polish eye. So he's already, even though he's alive, he's dead. When he is finished, a riding boot packed down the earth. So just a sad, what humans do to humans, a poem really well worth reading. And then lastly, this is not in your packet, and we're not going to cover the other Stafford poem in your packet. Oops, go back. These mornings, again, Stafford was a pacifist, a conscientious objector, and he writes this about smoke. These mornings, watching our smoke hurtle up out of the chimney into the canyon channel of air, the wind shakes it free over the trees and hurries it into nothing. Today, there is more smoke in the world than ever before. There are more cities going into the sky helplessly than ever before. The cities today are going away into the sky, and what is left is going into the earth. That is what happens when a city is bombed. Part of that city goes away into the sky, and part of that city goes into the earth. And that is what happens to people when a city is bombed. Part of them goes away into the sky, and part of them goes into the earth. And what is left for us between the sky and the earth is a scar. So it's often, Stafford continued his pacifism. There's apparently in Portland, there's an annual ceremony on August 6th, which marks the bombing of Hiroshima, where he and a friend of his would participate in a practice where people stretch out on the pavement to be outlined with chalk to indicate the victims of the bombings. So anyway, we ran a few minutes over. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, Barb.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Okay.
Watch for a reminder for session 3, which will be late 40s through now. Another, as I called it last time, speed dating romp through American poetry. So thank you for coming.
Well,
Lucy,
thank you.
any new programs coming up that you want to mention?
Not that I can think of at this moment.
Right.
But
It's getting late.
thank you so much, Barb.
Oh, thank you, everyone, for coming. We'll hope to see you for session 3.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.